Hello and welcome to a Total Soccer Show spin-off special. My name is Darryl Grove, and spin-off specialing with me, it's Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Is that a T quadruple S, I think? And also hello.
Yes. So what's it all about, Taylor? What's this special spin-off?
You mean aside from the acronym that's kind of confusing?
Yes.
It is about us increasing our coverage of our local team, the Richmond Kickers.
We have partnered with the Richmond Kickers to produce some weekly content. Every week, we are going to be reviewing the goals and the action from the Richmond Kickers USL League One games. This is good news if you're a Kickers fan, I hope, because it's more coverage of the Kickers. You'll sort of really hear, you know how we do it, right? We spend a lot of time breaking down a goal, so you'll get a really full explanation of what happened.
Did you just ask me if I know how we do it?
I'm kind of talking to the listener as well as to you.
All right,
we've had this conversation before.
I was like, you know that I've been here, right?
I'm thinking it's also good for, if you're a fan of Lansing Ignite or Forward Madison or other League One teams, when the Kickers play your team, we'll be covering the goals that your team concedes.
Yes.
And maybe scores.
Depending
on how the Kickers season goes.
Yeah, but I think we also want to bring in a little bit of not just this is a podcast for Richmond Kickers fans or fans of the team that the Kickers are playing that week. For example, this week we're going to be doing an in-depth interview with Kickers head coach David Bulow.
Yes.
And it is some about which is the best which player is the best penalty taker.
Yeah, and how they decide who's taking the penalty.
Yeah. Exactly. But then
David is really generous with some insights that I didn't think we would get.
This is true. But then we also get into philosophy of coaching and approaches to training and approaches to set pieces and so
run-ins with Gregg Berhalter.
Berhalter.
I'm hoping that if anyone was thinking maybe this isn't for me, there's a run-in with Gregg Berhalter early on in this interview that you'll want to hear.
It sounds like there are similarities between interviewing for a Gregg Berhalter assistant coaching position or a position under Gregg Berhalter and auditioning for SNL. That Lorne Michaels makes that as uncomfortable as possible to see how you deal with it.
Yeah.
Little bit of a similarity there with Gregg Berhalter.
We're hoping if you live in a town where maybe you don't have a soccer team and maybe you're a neutral looking for a team, maybe you could follow the Richmond Kickers even if you don't live in Richmond, because you're going to hear about them every week on the Total Soccer Show, and you'll have Taylor and I sort of breaking down the action for you.
Then you can make a pilgrimage here. We have breweries in a river. Why not? Come on down.
Breweries in a river.
Yeah.
Every other city in America doesn't have that.
No, they don't.
We do have a great food scene, though, and we do have the Richmond Kickers.
See? It all works out.
And we have head coach David Bulow. So he sat down with us today for a really great interview, which you are about to hear. In the Total Soccer Show office, we have David Bulow, head coach of the Richmond Kickers. Welcome.
Thank you.
First question, did I pronounce your second name correctly? I want to get that down before we really
Yes, it's Bulow, as in my high school history teacher called me Klaus, as in Klaus von Bulow. Yes, so he gave everybody nicknames, so it's Bulow, yes.
This is
you know the Red Army's going to listen to this. And
that's okay. That's okay.
This is the great magnet in effect, because that's the third Klaus von Bulow reference I've heard this week, and I don't know who Klaus von Bulow is.
Let's start there then.
I forget. It's been a while.
Oh, I can feel the tweets coming out right now. I don't know either.
See, there we go. I know Jeremy Irons won an Oscar playing him. That's what I know. That was one of the referenses for this week.
Is that a Terry Gilliam film?
Yeah, sure. Why not? That sounds likely. I have no idea. You're the film guy.
Was he in Cars 2?
Haven't seen it.
Okay.
All right. Should we get to some soccer questions?
Sure.
We have all kinds of questions for you, David, and we really appreciate you being here. We also have some questions from the Red Army later on, so brace yourself.
Bring it on.
All right. First question.
I feel like this is probably the more fun format for Red Army questions as opposed to their usual format of several drinks deep. Yeah. So this works a little better.
Questions at the opposition.
Exactly.
All right, first question. There's obviously a lot to talk about 2019. I want to go back. I want to go back to 2018 when you stepped in as head coach. I want to know the process. Did you know that Lee Cowdershaw was stepping down? Was it pre-planned? Was it a surprise? How did all that go down?
It was a big surprise. At the time, I was coaching for Richmond United in the U.S. Development Academy here in Richmond. And I had some interest from Atlanta United and their academy. A friend of mine is down there. And then I also had some interest from Columbus Crews Academy. So I actually went on an interview down in Atlanta, got to see their facility down there, which was unbelievable. Ran a session for Tony Annan down there, and they've had some interest in me, and it was just a matter of timing. And so I went down there, and then maybe a week later, I flew out to Columbus for... I suppose before that, it started August of 2017. Had an inquiry from Columbus as well, and their process, they they send you a clip of their game. So I watched a full match of Columbus versus DC United, and they said, based on our principles, design a session for us. And so I write the session up, and I send it to Gregg Berhalter, and he looks at it and then calls you on the phone and destroys it and says, why did you do that? I don't think that would work. And just kind of tests you to see if you can defend, designing a session for a high level. And
so not destroys it because you did so badly. He destroys it as part of the
think
process.
It's a little bit of a test, but he was genuinely going, why would you do a 5v2 in a 10x10 square? That seems way too big. That's not realistic. I don't want to have done it that way. Yeah. So it was just interesting to kind of hear his perspective firsthand. And, it's a phone conference with their director of methodology, and it was just an interesting process. But the timing didn't work in any way. My wife was finishing nursing school, and so we said, look, it's not going to happen. Keep in touch. And 8 months later, they said, hey, can you come fly out? We want to bring you in. And so I flew out to Columbus, ran a session for their staff. Again, got grilled by Gregg firsthand. He's standing over you with a notepad and trying to evaluate your session and giving me feedback on it. And I got offers from both of them to go join their academies from Richmond. And
so we're lucky to have you.
Well, yeah, it's timing is everything. And while I was in Columbus, I got a text message from Rob Ukrop and said, hey, can you meet me tomorrow on a Sunday? And I said, yeah, sure. I'm out of town, but as soon as I get back, I'll meet you at Panera at Stony Point. And sat down with him. It was on a Sunday, and
I appreciate you giving Stony Point some business.
Yeah. It was close. But he sat me down and he said, hey, what do you think about the prospect of taking over for Lee with the Kickers? And I said, I'm blindsided by it.
Yeah.
Something I hadn't even considered. And
because we assumed Lee would be there for 200 years, right?
Exactly. So he asked if I was interested, and I said, I guess. I went home and talked about it with my wife, and I think I called him back on Monday, and I said, is this an inquiry or is this an offer? And he said, give me a couple days and I'll get back to you. And at this time, I'm stalling on Atlanta and Columbus, and you not want to burn a bridge, and then
especially a Berhalter bridge.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we made the decision that we were going to go to Atlanta on Wednesday morning, and Wednesday afternoon on my way to training for Richmond United, and I got a call from Rob with Vern, the lawyer, on the line, and they said, here's a hard offer. So that afternoon I kind of went, I guess we're staying in Richmond. So it was kind of it was a very quick process, and kind of unexpected. But from there, then I had about a month, maybe 6 weeks where I couldn't tell anybody. So kind of thinking it over and trying to make my decision, difficult phone calls to Columbus and Atlanta saying, thank you for the offer, but I have to turn it down. I think both of them probably thought that I was turning down one for the other. And eventually I had to come out and say, look, I've got an opportunity to coach in the USL. And they all said, no, you have to take that. And, so I got that kind of advice from just about anybody I talked about, because I didn't know what to do. The prospect of the trajectory of my career was I wanted to coach in the MLS, and the MLS Academy is as good as it gets in youth soccer here. But pro jobs, as much pressure as there is, they don't come around frequently. So, and I can always go back to the academy if I get sacked.
Don't talk like that. Don't talk like that.
So that was you taking over mid-season, and it's been a couple rough seasons for the Kickers. Second bottom 2 years in a row. Mm-hmm. Did that factor into your decision at all? Were you sort of thinking about how big of an obstacle kind of was facing you?
No, not at all. Just because I think it's one of those opportunities that you can't turn down. So, the hope is that you come in, you make such a big difference that you make the playoffs. And that was always the message I had to the team last year. The desire was to make the playoffs and win. The learning curve was really, really steep, and I had a lot to learn about me as a coach, my message, and the vision of how I wanted soccer to be played, and just learning how to deal with pros versus kids.
Mm-hmm. And with that, you don't have to name names unless you want to, but like when you come in and you're taking charge of a locker room, is it pretty much like unanimous, like we all want to prove ourselves to the new coach, we want to be like in that starting 11, or do you get a little bit of pushback? Do you get some people who are maybe less inclined to do what you're asking than others?
I don't know. I think everybody was excited about a different energy, and I wanted to give everybody an opportunity. So I didn't want to just stick with the guys that were paid a certain amount. I think I finished the season. I think the last game against Atlanta, I started, 4 or 5 pay-for-play guys. So I didn't really care about what your wage packet was or what your contract, the length of it. It was, can you perform in training, and do you fit the model that we're trying to play, and are you willing to fight for the team and win games? So I'm sure I upset some players, changing kind of what they were used to, but I think that's the nature when you bring in somebody new, and it's not necessarily their players.
So I am a little bit of a, I don't know if it's a people pleaser, but I never want to know that there are people out there who are annoyed or frustrated with me, but I feel like that is kind of the nature of the beast for your job, that there's going to be players who either don't like your style or don't like your system. Does that concern you at all? When a player leaves and you're sort of I hope that player's not going around, or is that just not a thing that really factors into your considerations?
There's not much I can control about that, so I don't know how much that weighs into your thinking in the moment. I don't think anybody likes not being liked, but at the same time,
Mourinho seems okay with it.
He's fine. Yeah. No comment. But I can't control that. I'm going to be as genuine as I can, and I think I'm very much a people person, and I come across as a fairly friendly guy. And but if you don't like me, you don't like me, and there's not much I can do about that.
So 2019 is coming, right? It's kind of a fresh start. Kickers are now in League One. Well, assuming the opposition will be, not as challenging, right? And
no idea. No idea.
And you've had a chance to really create your team, right? I know there are some guys who have come back, but it's majority new players, right? That I'm assuming you've been heavily involved in, putting the roster together. You mentioned earlier, deciding what your philosophy is as a head coach and what your message is. I'm really interested in what did you decide it was, and how did you get it across to the new players or the new group in the first session? What's the first thing you emphasized to the entire new group?
Well, I think Mika Elevar, my assistant, he really helps me. We try to think very much in objective football references, and while my style of play or my game model is completely subjective, as soon as we agree, the coaching staff and the players, that this is the way we're going to play, it becomes very objective. So it becomes very systematic that you're going to play this way, you're going to try to build from the back in this way or defend in a certain way. So that's not too challenging. I think the biggest challenge is really getting new players to buy into this way of thinking. I don't think it's very typical in this country, at least, to think in that very objective manner.
Right.
Thinking in football actions, thinking in team-level tactical communication on a first order.
Right.
And if we can get them to buy in on what it means to communicate, not just talking. The metaphor that I love is crossing the street. You don't just walk across the street. You can't just practice walking and then you know how to walk across the street. The first thing you have to do is communicate. You listen for cars. You look. You listen to your friends say, hey, don't cross the street, a car's coming.
Yeah.
You have to bring in information, then you make a decision whether you're going to cross and how fast you're going to go. If there's no cars, you can take your time. But
I'm picturing you with the team on I-95, trying to teach them some lessons.
But, I've used...
95 often to you, Daryl?
I'm
not a professional. So
I actually said that to the boys the other day. I said, who wants to close their eyes and try to cross the street? You have to communicate first. And communicating with your teammates is the highest order. And as soon as we get that level of team level communication, at a pretty efficient, level, then the actions become much more predictable for us. And that's hard to defend for anybody. You can scout us if you want, but we have an understanding of where we're going to go and what kind of rotations we're looking for. So that's been the biggest challenge, introducing that way of thinking to the players.
Yeah.
And then the nice thing is when you get to handpick all of your players, then you get to pick the players that suit how you want to play. So it's not a knock on the players that were here last year. There's some really talented players that I worked with last season. They just didn't quite fit the ideas that I had. So it's not a knock on them. It's probably a knock on me more than anything,
So you will have noticed that when you talked about style of play and got into some specifics, that Taylor and I kind of sat up straight. That's, I don't know how familiar you are with that show, but that's our nerdy thing, right? Mm-hmm. We love the Gregg Berhalter era because there's a defined style of play and you can kind of see it happening. So I guess, Taylor, I'm assuming you want to do the same thing. I'd really love to ask you about specifically your style of play. As much as you feel okay sharing the opposition teams, not so you won't be giving too many secrets away.
Yeah.
As much as you can tell us, because this is my personal theory that I think this is really important for soccer in America, but for Kickers fans to know what is the team trying to do, like what is the system. So the more specific you could give us, the better. How do you answer that? I guess there wasn't a question mark on the end.
No. It's a good question, and I think you probably ask any League One coach right now. We're all really insecure at this moment because nobody knows anything, and we're a couple days away. So, I think a month from now, when you have 4 or 5 games on tape, then it's going to be much harder to hide what you're doing.
So, how much can you take?
Or even maybe like a simpler way to start it would be like, how would you describe your philosophy when it comes to coaching? Are you do you want to be more attacking? Do you want to be on the front foot with possession? Are you more about sitting off? You mentioned trying to build out of the back. I'm wondering, like, what would you say are some of the things that you're going to be trying to emphasize?
Nobody likes Jose Mourinho. Nobody likes. I mean, look, he's very effective in what he does to win soccer games, and the objective reference of soccer is to score at a minimum 1 goal than the opponent. So it doesn't really matter if you have the ball or if you don't, as long as your team understands your method to attack. I played in Ireland. Their game model was get the ball forward as fast as you can because you play on a cow pasture and it's hard to play on the ground. Another club I played, we had a beautiful stadium, so we had the ball on the ground quite a bit more.
Who did you play for in Ireland?
Limavady United and Dungannon Swifts in Northern Ireland.
Oh, Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
I don't know either of those teams.
Not many do here in this country, but I mean, I like to have the ball. I mean, I was an attacking player. I mean, it's exhausting defending. You can sit back and protect space and try to counter like Leicester did a few years ago, and it's really effective if you have those tools. But I've assembled guys that want to be on the ball, that want to possess the ball. Josh Hughes, who we picked up from Nashville last year, I knew I was on to something because he was injured at the time, and he came to me after the game. We'd lost 4-0. I thought we played quite well in the first 30 minutes and gave up a couple bad goals, and he came up and complimented me out of the blue and said, I really like what you're doing. I really like how you're trying to play, and it's ambitious, and you stuck with it, and I took that as a huge compliment. And when he came back and said, this is a style that suits me and I would like to play for you, those are the type of guys that I wanted to bring around. So, I would like to possess. I'd like to attack. I mean, it's who doesn't like watching Man City? Who doesn't like watching Barcelona? I'm a Gooner, so who didn't like watching Arsenal? 15 years ago. Those teams are fun, entertaining, attacking soccer, but there is a pragmatic approach that maybe I missed out a little bit last year that has to be a part of your game model as well. So
is it no coincidence that the 2 jobs you interviewed for were with a Berhalter run team and a Tata Martino run team, which both have kind of similar possess the ball, open the opposition up kind of
and maybe that's where my personality and my thought process was attractive to them. So if that's going to give away a little bit, then maybe, but we're also not trying to be Columbus. We're also trying not to be Man City even. We have our own little twist.
Your son, I said no.
Just barely couldn't afford it. So
I'm assuming, though, that most players that are on this current roster didn't come up to you last season and say, like, hey, I really like what you're doing. I want to be part of it. So when you're assembling a new roster in a new league, how do you go about finding your players? I know there's open tryouts. I know some of the players from last season are re-signed. But I'm wondering, are you all going out and watching a bunch of footage from last year, or is it a lot of sort of we know what people are capable of because we've seen them before?
Well, it was challenging for me because it's something I'd never done before. There's Tim Hankinson at Chattanooga. I actually played for him at the Rapids back in 2003 and 4. So, he's been around for a long time, put together teams. John Harkes, obviously, with Cincinnati. There's guys that have actually assembled squads. So the biggest challenge for me when we released everybody, which I thought that was the right thing to do last year when we decided to move to League One, but it was kind of like, how do you do it? My tactic was we're going to League One. Nobody knows what it is, but my theory was if I can get as many championship guys as possible, if I could get 6 or 7 as a core of championship guys, then I think we'll be pretty well off, you know. Even if their guys are maybe role players but clearly had the talent to play at that level, maybe we can find, you know, a home for them here. I believe we have 14 or 15 signed from this year that were in the championship last year. So I think whether it's the way that we convinced them or how we connected with them, how I sold kind of my vision of what we were going to do to play, if they got sold on that, then that was kind of the idea of how can you make a phone call. You know, it was developing relationship with certain agents because you get bombarded with them. You get random emails, phone calls.
Sign my guy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You know, guys, I had a kid in Nigeria called me 3 or 4 times a day saying, please, coach, just get me there. I'm going, I can't do anything. We can't fly you here. We just don't have those types of resources. So, but yeah, it was just a process. I discovered transfermarket.co.uk. That became really handy just to get a broad picture of kind of what this player was, what their market value, ballpark, what it was, what their history was.
Do you know about Y-Scout?
I do, but just can't afford it. And that's the thing, though. I mean, there's so many tools. There's Y-Scout, there's Instat. They're hugely, you know, valuable, but there's a cost to them too. So it was just one of those extra things that the club needed to do to kind of modernize that I didn't personally have access to, but you know, then it's just kind of developing relationships. Coaches, you know, Neil Collins at Tampa Bay was really helpful with Wahab Akwai and Martin Rennie with Amasa Mancona. I mean, so you had those kind of connections that I've built through my playing career and just relationships that you make in this world because it's small. But yeah, I mean, it was a challenge for sure. I'm looking forward to next off season because now you're only looking for 4 or 5 players maybe as opposed to 24. But yeah,
I have a question about a specific player, Abubakar Keita. Is a guy we're excited about. We follow a lot of sort of, you know, US youth national team players. Mm-hmm. So he was on the U20 roster that was just playing in Spain. Mm-hmm. He might make the U20 World Cup in May. You'd lose him if he goes, right?
Yeah, that'd be great.
He's on loan. I don't know. He's on loan from Columbus Crew. That's my question. Do you hope he goes, or do you hope he stays?
Of course, I hope he goes.
You do.
Of course, I hope he goes. Yeah, I mean, my whole youth coaching career was. I mean, I feel privileged that I played at a professional level. I mean, it's not the highest level. I got a small taste of the MLS, just on the fringes of it. I played in Europe on a minor level, qualified for Europa League, which is pretty cool. Didn't get to play in the competition, but, I mean, even to play for the Kickers and win that championship, and you become a small celebrity. But it's fun. You get paid money to play soccer. I mean, that's your only job. And
tell them I pay a league to let us play.
You know, so if you can share that experience with somebody else, you know, either I have a kid that I coach and get them to a level and help them out. That's amazing, you know. And so if we can help Bubba get to that level where he's competing in a World Cup, I mean, why not? Yeah, I mean, it's going to look good on him. It's going to look good on the club. I think there's only a positive for him going. I really do hope he goes. Yeah.
And is it the fact that he was just with the U20s, like during your preseason, and the first game is this Saturday? Does that mean he has less chance of starting? I'm really asking for me because I want to see him play.
Yeah, he's likely not going to play a role. He picked up a little bit of a hamstring injury, I believe, against France. So he's actually in Columbus now, getting rehab. Yeah,
he's involved in the equalizer.
Yeah, but he played and he played well. We hear, and we're excited to get working. He's a freak athlete. He is a freak,
like covering ground kind of thing.
Yeah, he's a strong boy too. Right. So yeah, he'll be fun to watch, but I think he'll be around a group of guys that have some experience too. So I think he can learn from them. You know, we told him like this is League One compared to the MLS, and I'm sure that's not as exciting as playing in the MLS, but this is going to be a good team with some good pros who are doing things the right way, and I hope that he'll learn from that as well, and that'll be the next step in his career.
I'm slightly jealous that no one has ever referred to me as a freak athlete. I think at best I've gotten to like, he's an athlete.
Just a freak.
Yeah, exactly.
Just a freak.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. But I wanted to flip it around though and ask, so with some of the constraints you've already talked about, how do you all plan to do opposition research? Is it going to be kind of watching the past games? Like how much can you prepare ahead of time for teams who you maybe don't know that much about? Or in the case of like North Texas SC, if they send some players to FC Dallas, then suddenly they're not there. So with like the roster churn and things like that.
Saturday's opponents, Lansing Ignite, have never played a competitive game.
Yeah.
Right? This will be their first competitive game.
We actually, they released their 23-man roster for this weekend, and I think we recognized one name. So it's going to be a challenge individually, and trying to figure out what their tendencies are going to be difficult early. But we have ESPN Plus. So we'll watch those games and rewatch them. Both Meek and I are a bit film junkies, and we're big on tape and breaking down film for the guys. We had a 15-minute session today that should have been 10, just on pressing. And we're big on video and showing, and I've got a clear picture in my head of how I want the game to be played, and the challenge of coaching is, can you match that picture in 22 other heads that's just as clear? And that takes time, but we have a number of tools and methods to make sure that that's done properly.
So when you're coaching a game in the game, when you have that picture of how you think it should be going or how you want it to go, how quickly, how readily can you spot this is not working, this player's out of position, or they're doing something to pull that player out of position? Fairly quickly.
And it's a bit hard to explain, but it's just kind of the practice of coaching over time. And I've always fancied myself as a tactician, that I understand or like the tactical side of the game. I guess with my youth coaching, I always preferred to coach the older boys and girls than the younger one. There's certainly a benefit to teaching kids, proper technique and, kind of basic principles of the game. But I always liked kind of the chess match, or in my case, the checkers match of soccer. Kind of, can you make this adjustment there, without them knowing it? Can you prepare in a certain way? Can you present them a problem that maybe they didn't anticipate?
So what would you say, if there is like a minute, how quickly are you looking at the opposition to see like what shape they're in or where their key players might be?
I mostly watch the opposition more than myself, yeah, my team.
All right.
That's interesting.
This is interesting. I'm learning things here. I'm learning things here. We coach an adult league team together. So.
I've been obsessed in our preseason games. I really have not watched us much at all. So just
recognize the guys when
you No. So like even VCU, like the VCU game the other night, I think after 6 weeks, I think our guys have a fairly decent idea of what our attack should look like or what our defense should look like. So I'm looking at the opponent to see if what we're doing is affecting them as it should be. And if it's not, then I'll make the adjustments to my players.
Right. So, and I assume, is it about like maybe you spot a potential weakness and you're like, we can
absolutely
this side or do this or that?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Look out, Lansing.
Yeah.
And then how much does shorthand factor into that? In that, like, I'm assuming you can't yell at your central midfielder from all the way on the other side of the field, like, hey, make sure you go do that, because then the other team knows what you're doing a little bit. Is it, like, are you kind of on the fly pulling them over and adjusting, or is it just kind of little messages here and there to help them adjust?
Sometimes you can't hear. Mm-hmm. Sometimes, I remember playing in Orlando, you couldn't hear 15 yards onto the field just because of noise. So I can't imagine what it'd be like to play, kind of on a world-class level where you just can't hear it all. But no, it depends. Some messages are not very cryptic, but you're not giving away much. Sometimes you have to pull them over. I've been known to write a note and say, here's this, tuck it in your shorts when you're done. And but yeah. So yeah, it just kind of depends on the situation.
Okay.
Yeah,
that makes sense. All right, do you want to do some Red Army questions, or have you got a few more?
I got 2 more questions about specific players, if you'll both indulge me. Joe Gallardo, I'm really interested in, because he was a name that we knew from, I want to say, the 2015, maybe U17 World Cup. He was with the Pulisic, Haji Wright class of players. I haven't read up. These are just like a basic understanding I have. I think he had some injuries, and now he's with the Richmond Kickers. So, and the noise you made when I said his name suggests that you're excited
he's
about him.
Good. Yeah. He's going to be really, really good. He's a really talented kid. I think I think he was involved with that group, and I think a lot of that group, the Pulisic group, I think they all got their chance in Europe and kind of never looked back, and he was just as much of a standout in that group, and I don't think he got his opportunity. Right. And I think being young, he probably said, well, I've got to go to Porto too, or I've got to go, and it didn't quite work out, and I think he got a bit distracted by that. Instead of just saying, hey, look, put your head down, work, take your chance. I mean, at 20 years old, you haven't done anything yet, really. I mean, even those youth internationals, how many youth internationals, going to make it big on that youth international stage would never do anything, So I think there's a process and that's hard to deal with now, the way that soccer players are covered on that youth level. I mean, everyone's trying to find that next superstar. So, he was in Orlando. It's funny, one of the YouTube videos I saw of him, he was putting a cross in against the Kickers. So he was another one that played USL, and then when Orlando folded, Meek and I were stunned that nobody picked him up last year. He was just without a club. And Dennis Chin, he and I talked regularly in the off season. Having played against Dennis and knowing how talented he is, and he bought into what we were doing. He said, look, I have a player down here. He might not need a lot of money. He just needs an opportunity. And so called him up, and it was one of those things where you made a conversation. He's actually one of the few players that Matt Spear, when he came on, Matt wanted to talk to everybody.
Players? All
the players, yeah. Before, most of the decisions came down to me, the final decision. I want him, or, I don't want him. But Matt wanted to talk to everybody, just to kind of have a conversation, make sure they fit in. When Joe said he wanted to come, I said, we're gone, done. I sent out an offer sheet without him talking to Matt, and Matt was like, I'd like to talk to him. I said, I don't care, Matt. I don't want to lose him for any reason. Yeah. So he's going to be really exciting. He was one of the players that we didn't have in the squad, and he kind of finished the squad off, in my opinion.
What is it about him? What position will he play, for example?
He can play anywhere across the four, but he's really good on the ball, very skillful. He's got a very intense way of defending and counter-pressing, score with both feet, pick out a pass. He's not huge, so he's unassuming, but the kid can play. He can play, so he's going to be very exciting to watch.
All right.
And the nice thing too is, as much as I'm paying attention to, like League One podcasts and Twitter and the like, he seems to be going under the radar, which I'm fine with. So, but I'm really excited to see him play, and I think he understands that this is an opportunity for him, and I think he's bought into Meek and myself in the new Kickers club. So I think he feels at home here. So
great. I also want to ask about a player who's been with the Kickers a long time and he's returning, Braden Troyer. My question is, what position will Braden Troyer play?
I just want to warn you up front. This is a semi-loaded question because Daryl has opinions. So go ahead.
Okay. I asked him last year.
Yeah.
I said, if you could put yourself first on the team sheet, where would you start yourself? And he said 6. Yeah. So he said defensive midfielder. So that's where I'm leaning towards. Uh-huh. But he has so much versatility. He can cover at center half. He can cover at right back. He's going to be one of the best defenders in the league, no matter where he plays. So I think he has a lot of versatility. So I don't quite know yet.
Right.
But I get a pass because he's still a few weeks out from his knee surgery. So.
Oh, okay. So we won't see him immediately.
No.
So I love your answer because you didn't say left back. And one of the things I always thought about Braden Troyer is defensively magnificent, perfectly good passing, but he would get down the left flank and he would cut back to his right foot, which is fine, right? Because he's right-footed. And I felt like it just wasn't a good use of him.
Lansing, we're going to play him at left back all year, starting on Saturday.
I do forget that this is like one of your... It's not weird, but it's just a thing that I forget about that you really prioritize. If you're playing on one side, you should be that.
Oh, yeah, I'm all into like left-footed, left centre-back, right-footed, right centre-back, and so on. But also, we did the commentary for 2 years, and it was a lot of like me literally doing the play-by-play of Troyer goes down the left flank, cuts back, passes infield with his right foot.
Well, you'll be glad to know we've got Connor Shinovsky and Wahab are right-footed right centre-backs, and Buba and Ivan are left-footed centre-backs. So we're sorted there.
Are we on the same page yet?
Yes.
Is a justification for you?
A little bit.
All right. I'm glad you feel good. Let's see if the Red Army feels as good. We got a few questions from them. I wanted to start with, I don't know, Daryl, do you have any burning a hole in your iPad?
I guess we just go through, hope not. I guess just go through the order they're in, just so we don't miss anybody. Yeah. So Red Army, obviously, the supporters group. Yeah. I'm assuming you're good with them?
They're the best in the league.
Yeah.
Best in either league. Championship or otherwise, yeah.
Shots fired, all of you clubs out there, especially Lansing. Mike Garbett, what is the biggest adjustment you've had to make between playing and coaching?
Good question. It's hard because I had to retire because of injury. My knees just got old. So I still think of myself as a player at times, that I want to play. And the atmosphere we have around the team, they really enjoy it. Like, it's fun. And it's competitive, and it's everything that the atmosphere and the environment is everything that I would have wanted to play in a club. So kind of that responsibility of the actual playing is gone, and I miss that, and that's probably the biggest transition. But again, just learning myself and growing. We have a continuum in our locker room that we shared with the players, and it starts with unconsciously incompetent, and then there's consciously competent, consciously competent, and unconsciously competent. Right now, I'm a bad coach, but at least I know it. So I'm just trying to improve. I'm consciously incompetent. I'm lousy, but I know it, and so I'm just trying to get better. We have our motto in the coaches' locker room. It's above the door. It says, "Be 1% less worse than yesterday," and that's So it's just getting better as a coach and learning my voice and being a better communicator. But I do miss playing. It's hard, and I can't play anymore. I'm just too old. My knees just.
Did you have to have ACLs and all that?
No. I just don't have any more cartilage. So I could play a game or a day, and then my knees swell up, and I waddle around the house like a 70-year-old.
How did you do in there's the front office versus Red Army game?
Quite well. I forget the score, but. Quite well.
So we have another question from Richard Hayes who asked...
First question from Richard Hayes.
Excuse me, yes. Well, I meant more so, it's kind of getting to something that I've just realized. He said, any word on Lucas's injury from the last preseason game? It looked pretty bad. And I'm realizing you've said, so Caton may be gone, Braden Troyer is out with injury. Are you all facing a little bit of an injury, not crisis, but concern heading into the start of the season?
It's not ideal, but... that's sport, so everybody's going to have to deal with it in some way. Lucas looked really bad. I think everybody's fear was an ACL, but it doesn't look to be the case. He got an MRI yesterday, met with another couple doctors today. I think it's going to be an MCL strain, not even a tear, but we're going to wait to hear that. But yeah, it's a bummer for him because he was excited to get a chance, and it was just his foot got caught in the turf and turned a bit funny. So, but he's walking around with a big brace, and so hopefully it's not as serious as it first looked.
So maybe not Saturday, but not too long in the future.
My hope, but can't say yet until we hear back.
I'm just so excited about the new league because I am realizing he's going to come in 4 or 5 games into the season maybe and just no one's going to know about him, and then suddenly he's going to tear it up. So.
And then you say, why is he still wearing that earring?
Exactly.
So that
and another one from Richard Hayes. He says, what will define a successful season for you this year? Playoffs or nothing less than a championship?
I'm too competitive. I want to win. I want to win the league. That's got to be the goal for me. I joke a little bit. I've got 2 wins as a pro coach, and they're both against the same team. So I think for me, I've got to prove that I can coach at this level, and I'm very conscious of that. But I mean, we have a really good group. I really do like the group, and I like the way they think, and I think what Meek and I have done to set us up, we're going to be very successful. I think everybody's so bought in, and it seems a little bit different than just the typical preseason excitement or something new. There's something special about this group and their understanding. I mean, even after a week, they picked up on ideas faster than I ever would have thought. So, I think for us, the playoffs have to be a minimum. But I'm trying to win. That's my ambition. And I've said it before. It'd be 10 years on since we won the league, and I was a big part of that. And so I want to play my part in winning the league again a decade on.
How do you think it will be like a similar feeling if and when you do as a manager, like to when you were a player, or do you think it takes on a different level when you're in charge of kind of everything?
Probably a little bit different, but no, I don't think it'll be any less exciting. I think it'll certainly be different, but I think, building this team from scratch, I think will mean a lot too. That I've had such a big hand in it. And I don't want to say that in an arrogant way, but there was a lot of responsibility, especially early on, trying to deal with the roster. And then obviously when the ownership change came and Matt came in, he was a big help. Unfortunately Mika came on later where the squad was kind of almost set, but there was a lot of responsibility and pressure to get it right. Because I want to be here. I have the coolest job in the city for sure. So I want it to last. And the nature of pro sports is you have to win. So
that checks out. My question then is, you've talked about how competitive you are. You talked about how you still think of yourself as a player. Say you're in the final. Y'all are up like 2-0.
No,
a couple minutes left. Sub it on.
No.
You sure?
Yes.
All right. So we got that knocked out. We know that for sure. Okay, cool.
Next Red Army question. All right. So you thought my Brad and Troyer question was a loaded question? Wait till you hear this one from John Osborne.
Okay.
Thoughts on short corners. Why are they used, and please don't use them?
We do find that a lot of the questions we get are, here is my opinion, and then with a question mark on the end. So I'm glad that we've continued that trend today.
Why are they used?
It's a good question.
That's what I say when I'm stalling.
I know. I'm stalling. How do I say this? There will be an occasional short corner from us. You can expect to see that. I will say it's not a random collection of acts, though. Okay. It's a very deliberate process. So, actually, I've never been more excited about corner kicks than what we've started in preseason. And we've only really spent the last 2 weeks on our corner kicks. Actually, on Friday, before the VCU friendly, because of Jeff Cup and the weather, we had to go to U of R to train. They were generous enough to help us out with some field space, because otherwise we wouldn't have been able to train.
Yeah. We're not using their soccer fields for much.
Yeah, I know. We actually took 40 corners in one training session, and you wouldn't think that you would get 40 corners in, but it was the most intense, entertaining session on set pieces I've ever been a part of.
All right.
And it was very deliberate in what we were doing. So, yes, there will be short corners, but there is a method to the madness, is what I'll say.
Got it. And I'm picking up a vibe that you don't want to give away the routine, because that would be giving too much away. But in general, can we say that short corners are kind of like a little bit of subterfuge, a little bit of just tricking the opposition into not getting what they usually expect, which is a cross into the box?
We are of the opinion it doesn't matter if you scout our corners.
Ooh.
It really doesn't matter. And that fits into our methodology and our game model and our belief in football action theory. There you go.
Football action theory.
Boom.
I've always heard that Michael Bradley and Bob Bradley are very careful with the words they use. They choose their words very carefully when doing interviews. I'm glad to see that we have another person who's like that. I feel like we got a very specific answer to the short corner question.
We always say language is very important. Josh Hughes, he said something. I forget what we were working. This was maybe 4 weeks ago, and he said something. But you told us to do this, and I said, nope, it didn't. What did it? He said, you told this player to deny this pass. And I said, I did not say that. I said discourage. And there's a massive difference between deny and discourage in the context of what we were talking about. So language is very important to us.
I think communicating clearly, right?
Yeah. Block it off versus make him think that maybe he shouldn't pass there.
Right.
I get that now.
So that's an example of, and Mika's a doctor, so he's the wordsmith.
So there's usually an international friendly the Kickers play every summer. Gordon Glover is asking if you could go against any team for the international friendly this year, who would it be? And why would it be Arsenal?
It would be Arsenal just because... No, that's a good question. I don't know. We're pushing really hard to try to get that done, just because it's such a big event. It's great for the city. It's great for the soccer community here. It's an absolute thrill for the players. Right. It was pretty cool last year to be, what is my third game that I'm coaching against Espanyol, who was in the Champions League for the first third of the season. So, I mean, it's just a thrill all the way around to have that game. The games in England are fun, or the English teams that come over are fun, just because we're so saturated with the English game. But, I mean, anybody really. Mm-hmm. It's just a thrill to test yourself against the best in the world. So, I don't know if I really have a. I know, Wolves. I don't know. My son would go, "Oh, the Wolves are playing. The Wolves are playing." He loves the Wolves.
That's this one's team as well.
Not as much as the Arsenal, but he loves the Wolves.
Next question from the Red Army. Christopher Guzman. It's no secret that the Kickers have scored fewer goals than usual in recent season. What do you think has led to the low goal count? And can we expect, with your first full season at the helm, to see the same 40-plus goals that we saw in 2014 and 2015?
I hope not. I mean, goals are the hardest thing to score. That's why they should be and will be celebrated. But yeah, I mean, my hope is that we have a clear method of how we're trying to score goals. And yeah, I mean, I'm not going to be a coach that, goes up 1-0 and says, that's good enough, let's shut up shop and get the result. I mean, I think we want to entertain. I mean, when I played, and I wanted to score as many goals as possible. So, I mean, you hope that the understanding of the team of how to create and finish chances is pretty clear, and that'll be the goal for everybody.
So 28 regular season games?
Yeah.
Christopher's asking, basically, can you guarantee 40-plus goals? It's such a tough question.
Yeah, it sure is.
I'm embarrassed to have asked it.
Chris, this is a good one. The over-under 39.5. Let's see. I don't know. It's impossible to guarantee something, but that would certainly be a target. Some of that, right. if not more. Yeah, I mean, why not? Why not 50 or 60? I mean, I don't want to limit myself, to some arbitrary number. I want to win first and foremost, but I want to entertain as well,
Got it. The final three questions are all from Matt Myers. He snuck in right as we were shutting it down.
And he actually stuck in two in the final one, so it's more like four questions.
Okay. Oh, really? Yeah, but Matt is like a really knowledgeable Kickers fan, so we wanted to make sure to get his questions in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the first one, how do you balance your idealism and approach versus practicality? For example, it seems clear that you want to possess and build out of the back. Does that mindset start to change when you're 1-0 down late in a match?
In that specific situation, not likely. Because I think once you start to abandon your principles and abandon your game plan, then I believe, and I don't necessarily have evidence for it, I believe you're less likely to score. When you just start launching it into the box and hoping something happens, as opposed to, controlling your actions, doing your best to control the outcomes that you want to have happen. I think that's the way to go. But yeah, I mean, I'll readily admit there was moments last year that I learned the hard way of saying, I at the end of the season, I said, you know what, if I would have played a little bit like Leicester, let's say, just sat back and countered, would we have won more games? Would we have been close to the playoffs? I mean, Travis Warwick kicked the ball off the Red Bull's face 2 minutes into the game. I mean, should I have, against Red Bull, not even tried to play out of the back? Probably. Because of the way that they press, probably I should have done that. But at the same time, the team wasn't likely to win the championship last year. It was a time to learn and evaluate and learn about myself too. And so I think in the long run, not being a bit more pragmatic last year is probably going to pay off. But I'm very aware, I'm very conscious of, you made some big mistakes last year of how you set your team up. And that's down to me.
Yeah, I was going to ask, you may have just answered it there, but do you feel like pride factors into that a little bit? That if you change your entire approach because Red Bull are kind of limiting it, is there an element of they're forcing me to do something I don't want to do, and so I don't want to change it up, and so you kind of stick with it?
A little bit, but I mean, when you're in a results business, I am really thinking about what can I do? How can I set the team up to win? Actually, against Red Bulls, I've coached against their academy so much. That game I went into going, I feel best about this game more than any, and that one was a tough one. Same thing with the Louisville. It seems the games that I felt most prepared for were the games that we took our heaviest losses. So, but that's something for me to learn as a coach and evaluate. What should I have done better? How could I have prepped during the week better? Could I have done more analysis of my team and the opponent to give ourselves a better chance to win? And I think we've done that. And that was a big key to having a 7-week preseason, is I really wanted to take our time and learn each other and learn the model, so we're as efficient as possible. I think Ray, our ops guy, said that we played the most preseason games of anybody in League One, and I wasn't overly concerned about the results, just making sure that we were getting the work that was done right against somebody who was going to give us a different challenge. So, and I feel like we did that.
So you've done the work now. You know your players. The next question from Matt Myers then was, who do you think is the best penalty taker on the team?
Me.
I knew that was
me. It's not even close. Wrong way, Dave. He sends them wrong way.
How I now feel like you are going to step yourself on
you know what?
We're going back to
I've just reconsidered. So
maybe 91st minute penalty.
There you go.
All right. So
it's funny. Our reward for winning games in training is you get to take penalties. But the pressure is if you miss, then your whole team's done. So the keepers have been the better in the penalty situation so far. But Joe Gallardo scored a penalty in a preseason game. Matt Bulduck has scored. So we've got a couple guys, and I'm not one to dictate who's going to take them. They have to figure that out. Now, when I was playing, everybody knew. It was me.
What was your style? Like, did you do the Joseph Martinez hop run up? Did you do the Paul Pogba samba?
So approach? I'm going to show my age here. In the year 2000, Gaizka Mendieta for Valencia took a penalty against Oliver Kahn in the Champions League final, and his method was he would look at the goalkeeper, wait for him to lean one way, and casually roll the ball the other. And it took me 2.5 years to practice. And the first time I tried it in a game, it was a PDL game, pooped myself because it was running. The keeper didn't move. And, but my theory was if he doesn't move, kick it hard enough, he's not going to be able to go. But most keepers, actually in that 2009 final, the goalkeeper leapt out. I was a step inside the box, and I already knew that I was going to score. And actually, as I was swinging my foot to the ball, I said, Dave, you probably should hit this harder than you're about to hit it. And it was still pretty slow. But, I just waited. If the keeper dove to the left, I went to the right, and he dove to the right, and
I
went to the left.
I like that you're talking to yourself, calming in your head as you're taking a penalty. Yeah. Every time I've ever taken a penalty, I'm just screaming it. That's all it is. Like, don't miss, don't miss, don't miss, don't miss. Which is probably the best philosophy to have going into taking.
I had somebody, I think it was a Wilmington Hammerheads player, stood in front of me, because another thing, I had a really long run up. So I took a step or two outside of even the arc, and he stood in front of me to kind of put me off. And I said, just move. I'm going to make it. And he kind of laughed, and I did. So
wrong way, Dave.
Yeah. So, but I love penalties. They're fun. It's a good challenge, and but yeah. So I don't know who's going to take it. It's not for me to say. I think penalties are very much a confidence thing. If you think you can take it, then you should take it. And
is that unusual? Isn't there normally sort of a hierarchy, an established hierarchy in a team to prevent like Kai Kamara, Federico Higuain arguments?
Yeah, clearly not, because they had that argument, Right, okay. So If I shouted out, "Hey, you go take the penalty," they're going, "No, I don't want it." Right. You're kind of I feel like you're putting them in a tough spot.
So you just see who steps up and who seems to be.
I won't say a word. Yeah, they figure it out themselves. So penalties are easy to me. It's the most objective action in all of soccer. It's either good or bad. It goes in or it doesn't. There is no such thing as a poor penalty. Poor penalty doesn't go in. So. Like Aubameyang's penalty against Spurs. If the keeper dives the other way, what a cool penalty.
Yeah.
The way the one the next game went in. It's the exact same penalty.
Sometimes you're the GOAT, and sometimes you're the GOAT.
If it goes in, it's good. If it doesn't, then it was lousy. So,
all right. But if it's you versus Joe Gallardo, 5 penalties each, who's winning that competition?
That young buck doesn't have a chance.
There we go.
Not a chance.
That's what I figured. And then the final two questions from Matt. Excluding the returning players, who do you foresee being the standout player that fans gravitate toward, and who will be the surprise player that fans and opponents might not see coming?
Good question. I really like Maxi Rodriguez. He's been a lot of fun. He's a personality, and he's a good player. He'll be a strong player for us. Akir Fitzgerald is going to be exceptional. He's keeper. Yeah, a little bit reminiscent of Ronnie Pascal. That he's not particularly tall, but he's so explosive. I mean, he makes some saves that, I mean, he tips balls around the corner. He's really explosive, good old head, and then his distribution is out of this world. So I mean, he'll spray the ball all over the place. It actually took a week for us to say, pass the ball to Akira. If you're in trouble, give it to him, because he can play. And so he becomes an 11th field player for us. So I'm excited about him.
Me too now.
I kind of forgot about the days of the goalkeeper by committee, where it was kind of whoever DC would send down or whoever was on loan. Yeah. I'm really excited that there's going to be a dedicated goalkeeper. Yeah. I feel like that probably helps with organization.
Yeah, definitely. And he's got two young keepers behind him, and I think he's enough of a pro where he'll be motivated enough where he's not having someone breathe down his neck, but he can also teach, Joe and Matt, and I mean, they'll get their chances in certain games and competitions, but he's going to be a lot of fun. Joe Gallardo, I think, is a little bit under the radar, but he's a special player. And, Danny Jackson, a center forward, he tactically has gotten everything that we've asked from any position right now, so it's a matter of the team catching up to him a little bit. And he's scored quite a few goals already in preseason. I think it's 3 or 4, so that's encouraging. And then Mattia is all of our littles are really good. And
I think you can get away with calling them that. I don't think that would work so well.
I mean, you look at them and you're going, wow, they're tiny. But they're quick, they're explosive, they're strong, they're tricky. I think teams are going to come in and go, wow, they seem really small, but the small guys can play. So I think those guys are going to surprise, just because you have this impression of what a pro soccer player should look like, and they're not it, but they can play.
So maybe the answer to the second part of Matt's question, who will be the players that fans and opponents might not see come in? It's the littles.
Could be the littles, yeah.
That feels like it needs to be a TIFO or some sort of poster. I need a flag for the littles. That's what I want. That's what I would like at the open. If not the opener, then a couple games in. Yes, that's what I want. There we go. I really do have. I could ask like a million more questions, but we have taken almost an hour of.
I have just one that I meant to answer. Thank you to the Red Army for your questions. We talked briefly before we started recording about Taylor and I will be doing the weekly episode where we're going to break down goals and stuff. And you said during the course of this interview that you're a film guy. You like to not cast too so much. You watch you break down the film of games. Does that mean you're going to be interested to hear what we have to say? Or
absolutely.
Are you going to be dreading it? And more importantly, if we get it wrong,
I'll call you out. Oh yeah, absolutely.
I really hope, because that would be for us. Yeah. For us, that would be a great experience, right? To have like our perspective of what we think we've worked out versus the real perspective of the guy that knows.
Happy to
what
show
you guys
that.
missed is this.
It's going to be really cool for home games specifically. We have a new camera system up at the stadium. It's called Speedio, and it's got like a 2-direction face camera that takes a panoramic video of the field. And it loads instantaneously. So I'm sure you've heard of Nagelsmann at Hoffenheim. He has that big, 6x3 meter screen. It's similar to that. So
I didn't know about the screen.
So yeah, like tomorrow's session at the stadium, we can go out and in the middle of training, pull out an iPad and go, look, you're standing right here, and this is where you should be standing. And so those little things we can break down, I think, will be a huge help for us. But really interesting to kind of pick apart, what's working and what's not. So
I feel the pressure a little bit.
Yeah,
I got there's a lot of science and technology over here. There's a lot of you and me watching stuff and talking.
Is it too late to back out?
Nah, we'll be fine. We'll be fine. I just get some angry texts every now and then.
You're good.
So correct me if I'm wrong. First game this Saturday, March 30th, 5 p.m. kickoff at City Stadium.
Yes, sir.
All right. Hopefully we'll be there, and we'll see 40-plus goals in the first game.
Be some kind of record.
That works. But David, thank you so much for taking all the time, and hopefully we'll have you back on throughout the season, hopefully to talk about all the wonderful goals and exploits and you beating Joe Gairo in penalties. I think we'll all look forward to that.
Done.
All right, perfect. All right. Well, thanks again. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.